Hello and welcome to YAGR's first impressions on Fortnite.
If you can hear me, I need your help. I'm all alone out here. If you can hear me, I need your help. I'm all alone out here. If you can hear me. Oh, you're awake. How's your head? Okay? Those stairs are really meant for feet. Just a tip for moving forward.
Security system failure.
Ignore that. So, introductions. I'm Ray, and we're the commander's support crew. Or at least we would be, if we had a commander. And if this drill is any indication, we won't last a second in the storm on our own. Say that again? Not a drill? Well, that certainly explains the monsters.
You can hear me. Now would be a great time to hurry up.
Copy that. Weapons and building systems coming online now.
Yeah, back in action. We got a pack of husks dead ahead. What's our firepower situation?
See for yourself.
Lead the way, Commander.
Welcome to Fortnite. This game has been an absolute blast to play. So, without further ado, we're going to jump right in. I want to talk about the intro just because it's very well done, as you may have seen from the couple of clips that preceded this. The cutscene is very well animated, the graphics and art are excellent, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But one of the interesting design choices for this intro cutscene that I thought was worth noting was the first-person design choice. It really immerses the player, and it kind of separates the fact that you are this commander being, as you find out through the initial intro. And that is a fun choice because it includes the player in the actual plot and development of the game outside of just writing them off as, yeah, I mean, you're kind of playing this character, but you're a third-person control, so, like, yeah, you're the player. You know how it works. They decided to opt out of that and actually say, hey, you're a commander that actually exists in the game world, and you're following these soldiers, and then you just happen to get to control the soldier because otherwise there wouldn't be a game. So that was one thing I thought was really cool, and it was well animated through the tripping and rolling at the end after you get through the door and looking back and seeing the horde of zombies. Whoa. It pulled out this very scary feeling. You know, you had the lightning cracking around you and this horde of shambling monsters trying to come eat your brains. And it gave you this really interesting feeling of being there and being in the moment, and that immersion is kind of lost in some games as of recently, which isn't necessarily a problem. Not every game needs to make you feel like you're always constantly in the moment and threat of danger, but it's very cool when it's done well, and I think that intro did it very well. That kind of hits a lot of the points that I felt about the intro. It was a good first impression of the game. They did an excellent job. They also did a good contrast with having you have those strong emotions of fear and danger, and then as soon as you're in safety, you're greeted by this fun, picturesque character of this little robot and her crew named Ray, and she cracks a joke almost immediately. And it says, hey, this game is supposed to be a little scary and serious and high action, high impact content, but it's also going to be enjoyable and lighthearted at times too. So now we're going to move on to talking about the art and graphics of the game. As you can see in the gameplay in the background, it is a very well designed, very cute and beautiful kind of art asset that they've put together here, art collection. character detail is done very well, from the motion of the character model through actions of swinging the pick, shooting the gun, various other things. And even later you'll see some of the unimportant characters, the generic survivors that you go and save. They've even got little details too, like this girl has a little heart belt buckle that they didn't need to do that. They could have just put a square there, but they went and did it. And other survivors have, you know, little quirky, unique bits and bobs on their person, and it makes them look really unique and interesting. At least so far. It's pretty enjoyable getting to see all these different things, but one thing that is a little concerning with regard to art and graphics is a lot of the art assets are reused. You see a lot of dupes of the same looking tree and the same looking cars and the same looking fences and yada yada yada, which is understandable with the scale of the game that they have. But one thing moving forward outside of a first impressions video is hoping to see an expansive enough collection of art assets to where I don't get bored looking at everything and it doesn't start looking like a copy and paste.
That's everything we need to craft a gun.
So that's one thing to keep in mind. But that being said, the art that is in the game is uniquely beautiful. It's kind of got a Borderlands-y art vibe, but it's not quite as comic book thick black line art outline style. And it's just so refreshing to see this kind of art in an industry that's highly dominated right now by hyper-realistic or retro pixel art styles. It's fun to see a game like this come out where it's cartoony, but not over-the-top cartoony to where it's like, oh, I'm a cartoon character walking around, you know? So it was refreshing. It's a breath of fresh air when I get to look at this game, which is very enjoyable. One other thing I want to point out for art design is the unique approach to what a zombie, or in this game, I suppose, a husk, looks like. They're actually fairly skeletal in nature, at least the base ones are. I've seen 4 or 5 different kinds of zombie enemy models, or husk enemy models. I know there's more, but thus far I've seen that many. One includes a giant mutant with a club arm, which doesn't look anything like a zombie, so that's kind of cool. But the point I'm trying to get at is they took something that's been done 1,000,001 times and they made it different. I've never seen this kind of representation before, where, and what I'm talking about is essentially these zombies are humans with their skeleton skull sticking out, and the whole head skin is peeled back like a hood and hanging off. I've never thought of that before. I never expected to see that, and it's actually a very, very clever way of representing it to make the game stand out as unique in that kind of design art concept. Another thing that makes it unique and, in fact, clever is the aesthetic of the weapons. You have a lot of zombie games like Dead Rising where you have these crazy weapons. I'm going to sew scissor blades onto a boxing glove and get these claws or whatever, as an example. Well, this one, you don't quite have the customizability of that for weapons, but the weapons that are provided are diverse enough, especially when it comes to melee weapons. I remember one of the first swords you get is literally a ruler taped to a handle and sharpened, and it's called the ruler, and it's a sword. It's kind of clever to show that. It shows resourcefulness and adds a little bit more light humor in the game, things like that. And it's refreshing to see that kind of thought process go into the design of something as simple as a weapon, which takes such a small portion of the screen up at any given time. But one other thing about the visual design of the weapons that is a little disappointing is you have the ability to upgrade weapons or get higher quality weapons. So they have the standard quality scaling of white, green, blue, purple, orange. For those of us who have played World of Warcraft or other MMORPGs, it's common, uncommon, rare, epic, and legendary.
No need to worry.
And you don't really see a change in the weapon model until roughly like the rare, maybe, or rarer epic kind of quality section, if you will. And it's a little disappointing, but at the same time, it's a very minor knock because, like I said before, the actual model of the weapon takes up so little of the screen of visual content you're being bombarded with, all the different colors and moving bits. So it's not really that big of an issue, but it's something that could have been considered. So it's reasonable to bring up. The next thing I want to talk about as far as art and graphics go is the UI design. It's fairly utilitarian. It tells you what you need to know and when you need to know it. The tooltips are generally for the
Let's see how those survivors are holding up.
tutorial. But some of the things that I don't like about the UI are the lower right corner section of it. You can see it's got your tool and your list of weapons, and then you have some active abilities and gadgets you get later in your build menu. And it's just a lot of stuff going on in a small area. And I feel like there's some information somewhere in there that can be organized a little bit better, or maybe shrunk down. Like, I don't need font size 72 for my bullets. I don't know if that's like an accessibility concern or something like that, but like that could be shrunk down because I want most of my screen covered in information that's relevant to what I'm doing at the time. But otherwise, the in-mission UI is acceptable. When they have NPCs talking to you, it's just they're in a generic box outline. They could have done something cool like make it like a hologram talking to you, or put it in a little circle instead of just a plain box with a white border. But again, these are tiny, tiny, tiny gripes at an otherwise beautifully designed graphically and art style game. The pop-up of picking up loot and it being sucked into your person is pretty interesting and pretty cool, and it's very feedback oriented. And then you also get the text pop-up so you can see what you actually got if you don't recognize the graphic.
Select the square in the middle,
So
and the
that's
square below it to
responsive.
create a door.
And speaking of visual feedback, actually hitting an enemy with a bullet or hitting a tree to cut it down with your pickaxe, not only do you get a visual graphic representing it, such as, you know, splinters coming off of the tree or a little emoji hit marker when you get a headshot, but a lot of times you'll see the thing you're hitting react. When you're breaking the environment down, you see it kind of wobble and squish and warp and even start cracking and things like that. And when you hit an enemy, sometimes they'll stagger, or they might start changing direction, which is good. The feedback of actually doing something is there, and it's solid, and it tells you a lot more of the story of that one little action.
Some sort of rocket.
So there's plenty of good visual feedback,
wait,
and
it's
even
like
down
that
to
sort of
little
rocket.
dust clouds popping
Commander,
up when you
there's a
start or
satellite
stop
on
moving
board.
or change directions.
If we have
That doesn't need to
satellites,
be
we
there,
can
but the
guide
fact
the
that they
heroes and
did
the
put it in
survivors
there
back to our
just
home
adds
base.
so much more to the visual
let's launch
experience
this
of being
thing.
in the game. But we've talked at length about the art and graphics first impression, and I do want to remind everyone this is a first impressions video, so these opinions and views are likely to change in Wednesday's video, which is going to be our much longer, more in-depth review of the game. So we're going to move on to sound design, and I have to say the sound design in this game is excellent. It's fantastic. Great job to the Epic Games sound team. Well done. Each weapon has fairly unique sounds. Of course, some of them are going to sound similar. They're guns and swords and axes and stuff. But each weapon has
that's
a
strange.
reasonably
Someone
unique and
converted this
distinct
rocket to
sound
run on
to
blue
it.
gloves.
Walking,
then,
your
let's
footsteps,
find some blue
the
gloves.
sound changes when
Explore
what
the
terrain you're
rooms
walking
near
on
rockets. There
changes.
should be some blue
The
gloves
voice
close
lines,
by.
there's a reasonable number of voice lines for the generic NPCs. The voice acting in the game is absolutely incredible. I have to say, Ashley Birch as Ray, fantastic job. I love listening to her talk. Like, it's full of bad jokes, and the comedy is generally on point and just enough to stay lighthearted and humorous without saying, oh my god, she's talking again. And just the delivery of her lines. Ashley Birch, well done. Have to say, fantastic job. Moving on, the music.
That's enough.
The music in the game
Add the blue
is
glow to the
great.
rocket.
It's got a good soundtrack, not too repetitive, and it knows when to take a back seat. And I think that's very important. They did an excellent job designing that. It adds intensity at the right moments. It backs off when it needs to.
Great. Now get
it's
outside before
well
you're
done.
engulfed in
The
flaming
timing,
rocket exhaust.
not only the actual music itself is wonderful, it's good to listen to, it's
We
fun,
need to keep that rocket safe
but
until
the
launch.
timing of when the music cues happen is very well done too.
Don't take any chances, Lenny.
So that kind of covers the initial thoughts on sound design, and there will be more of that to follow in the later video for sure, because there is quite a lot to talk about there. It adds so much to the game. But now we're going to get to the meat and potatoes, mechanics and gameplay. This is what makes or breaks a game. This is what says this is fun or this is interesting or challenging. So, first off, the contextual environment, the world that you are in. There's contextual feedback on just about everything, and they did an excellent job making it responsive, snappy, and accurate. With a game like this, where almost everything is interactable on some degree, whether you can break it, move it, pick it up, whatever, it is very accurate. It is, you are looking at this is the information I will tell you. I'm not going to tell you 5 different things of information. You're looking at this rock, I'm not going to tell you about the tree to the right of it. I know exactly where your reticle is. Very, very nice, very crisp contextual feedback. The one complaint I have about it is you can't, for a game about zombies that are supposed to sometimes sneak up on you and they're supposed to just show up in hordes and you're supposed to get surprised occasionally, I kind of understand the purpose of this, but also in games like that, such as H1Z1, even PUBG, which isn't necessarily about zombies, but designed based off of that, or 7 Days to Die, things like that, you have the ability to look around while interacting with something. And in this game, if you move your camera off of what you're interacting with, you stop interacting with that object. So you basically choose to not be aware of roughly half of your surroundings if you interact with something. Mainly searching or opening a chest or something like that, which is a little annoying. Again, it's understandable though, from a realism point of view. If you're opening a chest, you're not going to be looking over your shoulder, you're going to be trying to bust the lock open. So I can respect that, but this game is not about realism, and we'll get into that a little bit more in a second. Again, a very minor gripe, but it's something that should be noted, because that would have been fairly easy to input. As long as you hold E, your interaction doesn't stop, and then you can move the camera wherever you want. Other games have done it. Specifically about the tutorial, which is most of the gameplay that you've been watching while I'm talking over it, is it introduces the mechanics at an excellent pace. The pacing of, hey, you're now being attacked by zombies, shoot them. Hey, you need to collect some resources, this is how you do that. Hey, now that you have those resources, maybe you should craft some bullets or a gun or a weapon. Oh, hey, now that you have this new weapon, there's some more zombies to go kill over that ridge. It's a good pacing. And then the follow-on missions, it still keeps that good pacing, and it changes the focus from introducing all of the base game mechanics to let's focus a little bit more on the construction mechanic, or let's focus a little bit more on the collection mechanic. Go run and do this mission for me, etc. So the pacing of the tutorial is excellent. Outside of missions, particularly the menu, which a significant portion of this game's progression exists in, the tutorials there need work, but we'll go more in depth on that in the deep dive analysis on Wednesday. We talked a little bit about how the environment is highly malleable. Just about everything is breakable and lootable, which comes with benefits and negatives. A pro of this is you never have resource shortcomings. If you're missing something, you can probably find it in the level you're currently in, unless you've been sitting there for 3 hours already looting everything else.
Now build defenses around the atlas and activate
and
it
that makes the environment customizable to a massive degree as well. So you can pretty much control your battlefield to 80% of the degree you'd probably like.
Bonus challenge
Very,
is now
very
available.
cool. Very, very nice. Only a few other games I know of have successfully pulled that off, and this indeed does that. One of the cons I have, and this could just be because of lack of experience in the game thus far, though, is I find myself hitting things that I didn't mean to. Particularly, especially when your harvesting power goes up and you're able to break things down faster. Sometimes there's a trash can I want to loot on the other side of a wall I just broke down, and I accidentally kept swinging and one-shot the trash can, so now I missed out on some loot. It's a little annoying. Or you're building and then you realize I need to cut down a tree to build this staircase, and you accidentally hit the wall you already built next to the tree. Now you have to spend resources to repair it. So I think that probably will improve with personal game experience, but it's going to happen regardless of experience level periodically. That's the major con I have with that. The other issue I have is the crafting mechanic. It's a little tough to grasp. There's some quality of life things that could be done to make it a lot easier. I think they introduced it well, having you craft harvest the materials and craft a weapon. But when I was in the crafting menu, I wanted to look at some of the other stuff I got because I bought the $60 Founders Pack, and it gives you some blueprints. And when I clicked on those blueprints, it said, these are the crafting materials you need. 8 of these, 12 of these, 11 of these, etc. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what that is because I'm a new player. So let me hover over it to find out what it is. And lo and behold, there's no mouse over tooltip for the crafting materials in the blueprint. Turns out it was blasting powder that I didn't know what it was. And I could go check out the crafting menu for that in a separate tab. But it never taught me that. And it would all have been mitigated by hovering over it and it's saying blasting powder in a small mouse over tooltip. It's an easy thing to do. It's easily missable when you're designing the game because you have so many other things to concern. And none of this is meant to be a knock on Epic Games. They've made a great game. It's just, you know, a quality of life thing that could be added at any given time that's going to make things more comprehensive and easier to pick up. I mentioned that the game introduces enemies well. It has a Borderlands style effect of when you meet a new enemy officially, it gives you a little cutscene and the name of it. You saw that with the husk. You see that with the pitchers that throw bones at you. You see that with generally any kind of enemy type whenever it's officially introduced. And I think that's fun. Gives you a little cinematic. It makes you think, oh shit, this guy's strong. Or this guy's unique and has a mechanic I need to be concerned about. So I think that's an excellent design choice as far as mechanics and gameplay go there for introducing things to players. And the other major thing is the construction. It's a very important mechanic in the game. It's impossible to play this game without it. You would fail a lot. And this mechanic, a lot of games have tried it, and unless your game is solely designed around building, i.e. something like Minecraft, or, you know, other games such as that where you build essentially a tower defense, like Orcs Must Die is all about building, and then it plays down the shooting aspect of it for the most part. It's a challenging mechanic, especially when they want to make it as customizable as they have. And frankly, I think they did the best they could to take this complex mechanic and simplify it. It is something that is easy to pick up. It's not hard to press F1 and build a wall or F2 and build a floor. It's very accurately introduced. It's very easy to pick up, and it is very difficult to master. Building things in the beginning of the game was very slow. I had to figure out how to edit a wall. I had to figure out how to switch to a floor quickly. I had to figure out how to edit the floor, and particularly the stair editing was difficult. But the longer I've played this game, the faster and faster I'm able to build things. And I start coming up with these blueprints of, you know, okay, this is a 5 power level mission. I can just build a pen around the damn objective and I'll be good to go. Things like that. So game knowledge and skill and experience help with that. And I think that's the only way around it. I don't think they could have done particularly much else to make it simpler for players to grasp, pick up, and learn. I think that mechanic just has a natural learning curve that's rather difficult to pick up and requires a certain degree of experience. The last thing I want to touch on for mechanics and gameplay is the actual shooting, because it's such a major part of the game, and using skills. Using skills is fairly intuitive, and swapping weapons is nearly seamless, which is very nice. Using the skills generally provides some kind of reticle and is effective. One thing I don't like, though, is you can't reload while you're waiting for some delayed effect like an airstrike. If I press the button, I should pull my gun out and get ready to go after that. I shouldn't have to hold the controller until the missiles hit. Or at least let me reload, maybe not shoot, but again, a fairly small gripe. And the actual mechanics of the gunplay are a little more detailed than I expected. I expected a point and shoot. I thought it was going to be more about construction, but it's equally construction and gunplay. The reason I bring this up is the complexity of the gunplay is somewhere between competitive shooter and baby's first FPS. Competitive shooters include bullet drop and travel time and zeroing and things like that, and it is nowhere near that complex, thank goodness, otherwise I'd be useless. But it's also not a point and click and I always get consistent damage. There is damage drop off, and it is different for each type of weapon and each type of bullet. However, it seems like every weapon is hit scan from my first impressions. It requires a little bit more testing, but I tried leading targets, and I was fairly certain the actual graphic of the bullet went into the body, but the damage didn't register. And then I would put my crosshair on the target, shoot, and the graphical bullet would miss them, but I would get the damage before the bullet would actually reach the target. So it seems like hit scan, and the bullet drop-off damage is very real. I could feel it throughout the whole entire First Impressions playthrough. Pistols would do, 40 damage up close and 6 damage a mile away, which totally makes sense. I think that's completely reasonable. And I enjoy the fact that it's in between the hyper-complexity of CSGO or Overwatch or Battlefield, but it's not a simple point, click, and do a million damage either, because it needs a certain degree of complexity to be entertaining and challenging and make you want to try different weapons. That's going to wrap up our mechanics and gameplay section for our first impressions of Fortnite. Thank you for listening. This has been the YAGR team on our first impressions for Fortnite, and please tune in on Wednesday for our in-depth deep dive analysis of Fortnite, which should last roughly 30 to 90 minutes. Thanks for watching, and again, this has been the YAGR team. See you online soon.
Whoa! It just blasted a hole in the clouds! Score 1 for reckless amateur science! We've got to stock up on these beautiful sky lasers.